Guess is that all along here this wall was maybe not higher, but that was somehow a walkway. And here we do have an entrance, so let's go take a look inside. Again, even here where the Inca would have had very good corners, here they're just serviceable. Not unlike what you might find in the United States West when people built homes of stone. But what we do see here are the niches. Could this have had a solar and moon implication, giving timing like an Intawani, where the sun at different times of the year would go into these niches? I can only imagine that's true. What these other two are for, I don't know. Notice the peak that we're seeing there. It would have gone up into a true peak and then be covered by a roof of thatch, as we've seen. As I've said before, I someday hope there will be a technology that allows these stones to speak audibly and visually. Our little temple, we'll call it, had an adjunct room, perhaps for the priests and their regalia. Look back at those terraces. Notice how they came to this curving in wall, another curved wall, another, and still another curved wall. They're curving into what I think is an old road that they had built. And these are the steps leading down to it, as well as steps leading up to our left to what a sign up there says is terrazza or terrazzo, which is kind of like, I think, a plaza. We're looking down that walkway that I spoke of, or at least that I thought is a walkway, or a single terrace. Here, the back of that temple house, if you will. Notice its construction with those flat rocks across the top, defining the tops of the walls of the structure. Here again, a cornerstone obviously, but well dressed, no. Earlier when I was talking down there about seeing down and saw a place where I thought the locals might scramble down, I could see that there was this kind of what looked like a larger path. And my guess is that this stairway that we're standing on, was continued down the hill, all in stone, to wherever they needed to access this mountain from. This is that, like any competent stone worker, they simply found stones to fit the configurations that they were building through. It appears that the walkway went to the right, and this may have been just a path up here. It's either modern or not. These stones seem to suggest it could have had some older context, but I don't know. There's our protective upper wall. I'm climbing up this hill on the assumption that terrazzo meant more than just the slope or a little bit of a flat area there. However, I'm not sure I see anything. That stone could have served as a place for putting religious mementos like Cojitambo in Peru. On the other hand, might be just natural. Site below and to the left of us. Notice that here, there isn't just one wall. There's that wall which we could see, but this one that we apparently did not see. Again, whether these were defensive or just providing terraces, I don't know. I think either would be logical. Because notice over there, unless this wall, that's the first wall we looked at right straight ahead, made a abrupt curve and went to that wall, they never connected. And those two walls could simply have been to allow a large terraces on that slope. There may even be evidence of another terrace down below to disconnect it from the terrace that might have been behind that wall. Directly above the ruins, which are directly behind the camera view, the sign indicates this is a picnic area, but it's quite large and round. Could this have been part of their complex? Did they farm it? Or was this hacked out when they were building those towers. There's still another flat area. Certainly if these areas existed, they used them. There are several little towns up in this immediate area like this, which certainly makes sense given the population of these hills. You can see that this natural flat area, probably somewhat manicured by the people who used it, gave moderate protection as a fortress site. High, these three huts might well have been a very thoughtful gesture for people to get out of the rain, or even more so for overnight camping, for those who chose to. Maybe even for archaeologists who would spend a few nights here. The backdrop of this mountain and its sheer face down several hundred feet is a slam dunk for protection for this fortress. So the only way up was the hill I climbed. That face, if you will. Apparently is the drive route for vehicles going up there. Standing right next to that wall, the left end of it, the far end of that first of those two second walls, and I'm guessing this was clearly for agricultural terracing. And there you can see the hint of the beginning of that wall there. Now whether it connected to that bigger one, I don't really know from here. But probably for the relatively modest number of people that occupied this area, except during times of threat, maybe this was adequate agriculture. Big stone's shape is curiously similar to the shape and size of stones that were used as headstones. Here on what's the lower end of that terrace, above first pretty wall that we looked at, the curved one that has the three terraces on it and the curved ends, is an irrigation ditch, or a drainage ditch rather, that the park has put in here to protect this wall. See the thickness of this wall. This looks like a past archaeological dig. Here we're at the far end of that curved wall, and it appears to dive into the ground. Notice how this wraps around, creating almost the hint of an ovoid or an oblong. This scene depicted just pretty much from where we are now, except at a higher elevation, I think. It's interesting that this first area we walked on that has the two walls and the entrance over at the side beyond this first wall, and then what looked like a water reservoir at the very left, is right in the middle of this huge or large plateau area. Certainly it would have had status compared to those who may have lived or were standing down there. Interesting because it's a big, huge pile of rock. Was there something underneath it the archaeologists have not yet probed or chose not to let us see? Here's a square hole which has all the evidence of archaeology, and here is a collection of fairly decent sized stones laid out kind of in a row. Could this have been a wall? Remember, behind this, what looks like a mountain, is actually a sheer wall cliff. Stones in somewhat of a line, but am I imagining? Logical to assume that to the left side here would have been structures, etc. This looks like the old path continuing down, and here also, so I'm not going to travel. It looks a little too treacherous to take a risk on. I'm walking down this path, which I think is the old road, because if you look closely you'll see that the wall to the left has been chopped out and that it's fairly wide if you were to carve back these bushes on the left to get to that wall. As you can see, this is quite a wide area and it's been chopped out. For example, the wall is about 4 feet away from me, and to my left by about 1.5 feet is more flat trail space. There's also a profusion of stones along this trail, and these in particular right in a straight line, suggesting it could have been a stairway or just a walkway. And also notice that this is a terraceable or arable, relatively flat area, and it could have been used for farming, and that would be another reason why people would have need of a road to bring produce back and forth as well as themselves. This is how this chunk of rock creates almost a natural wall, and it looks like the trail goes that way, and that might be some steps there too, although I think if they are, they're new. As you can see, this makes a natural pathway down here, right where I'm standing, and then right down between these two rock outcroppings.